Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. I'm Kisma, and today's episode is number 3 in our series of the Spiritual Detox. And specifically, this episode is called Spiritual Awakening.
For resources and show notes, you can go to illuminationacademy.net/INK144. But now let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set.
Hello, Nick. What's going on?
Well, I'm quite excited about this episode.
Are you ready for a spiritual awakening?
I am ready for a spiritual awakening.
Spiritual detox. Just to kind of recap the 3 episodes, we started with people, places, events that need to kind of move out of our life if they are no longer serving our path or purpose. And just to reiterate what we talked in that episode, which I believe was 142, was this isn't a harsh, pushing people out of your life. It's more about the internal work and really reflecting on who has the ability to support you. Are you with the right friends, the right group, etc., and having that courage to say no and to say yes.
Right.
And then the next episode was about clearing out mentally and emotionally, those thought flows that get stuck in our mind and the words, the word is our wand, and looking at the emotional vibration about what we're holding on to and we're not willing to clean out. And in order to raise the vibration and raise what is being put in us, we really do have to purge.
Yes.
And today we're talking about that spiritual awakening. And this is when we started to go there in a couple of episodes, but this is when we look at 3 main things that we're going to talk about today. Number 1, spiritual pride. Number 2, spiritual window shopping. And number 3, spiritual delusion.
Yeah.
Heavy.
Well, and really, really important. So as we start to clean up these lower levels, right? You start to clean up the mental and emotional levels. You start to clean up physically in the relationships around you and clean up all those things. Well, that opens a channel for greater connection to your spiritual calling, your mission, your purpose,
your people, your guides, the universe, right. Spirit. I like using the word spirit, source, universe, your intuition. And
this is also the place that is, I think a lot of people have the misunderstanding that it's some blissed out kind of space to be in. And this is actually where things really start to ratchet up,
right,
and speed up, which can be really, really distressing. And it's a major place where people get stuck. And when they get stuck in this level, this is a very insidious level in the sense that when something gets stuck here, it's very difficult to, unglue it. Right? If it's like some kind of attachment or something like that, it gets really, really sticky. And it also is a lot of things that hide out under the surface,
right?
Because it's dealing very directly with the belief system that we've adopted, and that belief system speaks to the very core of who we are.
Exactly.
So when we talk about spiritual awakening, I'd love to do a whole episode, which we will in the future, hopefully soon, about some of the challenges that can come up when you start to really wake up.
Right.
A lot of people go through this and it just sends their life sideways. And that's an important thing to talk about too. But for right now, I want to talk about some of the impediments to that.
Right.
And some of the things that can really slow people down along that path and get them stuck at a certain place.
Yeah. So let's start with spiritual pride. Big one.
Yeah. This is the biggest.
We've heard, in India, Swamiji would talk about spiritual pride is deadly.
It is death.
It's death. He would go to great extents to make sure his students were not in spiritual pride.
Well, I think it'd be valuable to talk a little bit about what spiritual pride is.
Go for it.
I'd like to hear from you.
Well,
what do you see?
Yeah, the spiritual pride is that piece where, and really people, we see it so often where a spiritual, let me just preface this by saying assessment and discernment. I certainly do, because there are great spiritual teachers that have fallen. God bless them, because I bet on the way up it was painful. And I do know that even some of the great ones that fell, that crossed over, if we look at some of the really big fundamentalist churches or other, okay, things went a little wonky. Yet I want to say that many people have delivered amazing spiritual teaching. So I never want to address this by taking away any good that a human brought through their teachings. I think that's really important.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I do. I think that's really important too.
Because it's really easy to look at someone when they all of a sudden are in the pride, which means I'm better than everybody else. I'm untouchable.
Yeah.
And that's basically what it is. And that is dangerous.
Yeah. It is easy to get stuck in the personality
and
miss the teachings.
Right. But the spiritual pride will look like a spiritual teacher of saying, I'm going through an interesting thing now. I can't really talk about it. One day I will. But, a spiritual teacher taking from his students, or someone just being like, I'm above that. I'm above the universal laws. That's when there's a problem.
Yeah.
Karma doesn't touch me. Karma touches everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so once somebody through their mental thoughts or their emotional states believes they're above it all, they're in spiritual pride. And that's basically equal to they've fallen.
It is. And it's really setting a person up for a massive, massive hit. I mean, you talk
massive hit karmically.
Major 2x4.
Yeah.
And so this is one, I don't mean to inject fear here, but this is one to really be on the guard.
Yeah, it's important.
It really is, because when you start to open up and really have a greater sense of connection, one of the first things is peace.
Yeah.
It's like, man, when you land in your purpose, there is nothing quite as peaceful as that. Like, oh man, I am doing exactly what I'm here to be doing. This is right.
Exactly. And with that comes, you've heard us talk a lot about objectivity. You're in your flow. You don't need to put somebody else down. So another way that spiritual pride shows up in teachers or people or whatever is they'll put other people down. Oh, I know better than that. And there's such a strong willfulness there. It hurts. You can feel it. It's like a dagger. But when one is really in the awakening, they're in their divine success track. They can speak eloquently about different opinions, but they don't degrade others. There's no need for it.
Right.
I mean, the true alignment and the true flow, there is such a confidence and such a humility that there's no need to address someone else as good, bad, right, or wrong.
Everything has its place on the journey. So like I was saying, when you start to feel that sense of peace, it's really easy to say like, I got it.
Right.
I've got it. We're good.
Yeah.
Right. And as soon as you say that, that's the moment. That's a big red flag.
Okay. But I think that's more spiritual delusion.
Could be. They do overlap.
They overlap. So let's kind of dissect both, because I think the spiritual pride shows up more in putting others down. And I know it all. I'm above kind of the laws.
The ultimate arrogance, you're right.
It's an ultimate arrogance.
Is I am above the laws.
Right. Spiritual delusion is, I got it. No worries. I'm all good.
Yeah.
Well, if you're all good, you're completely self-realized.
Yeah.
So I think like you're right. They interject, but I feel like that's the nuance that is different.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's almost like the spiritual delusion can be, we check out. Oh, I got this. I'm good. And so we don't take that next step forward on our path.
Yeah. There's a shade of that pride in there. This is where they overlap, and they feed into one another, because the pride is like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's all good. I got this. When the delusion is that like, yeah, you're really just, you've got your eye off the ball. Basically. And when you lose that sense of humility, that's exactly what happens is you take your eye off the ball, and then you're like, oh, it's all good. And you delude yourself into believing that, oh, it's all perfect. It'll all work out perfectly. All I just have to do is just keep doing whatever I'm doing. and you keep doing exactly what you've been doing, you'll keep getting exactly what you've been getting.
Right.
And spiritual evolution is not that. Spiritual evolution is a constant expansion and growth. And there's an effort involved in that. So
now there's another thing that can evolve from this. So the way one can know if we're in spiritual delusion, there's a major checking out. It's like, I'm going to sit on the beach and meditate for 3 hours, so I'm good. Or I did my meditation for an hour, so I'm good. That's delusion. The fact is, when you look at the most spiritual beings on the planet, they were in action. And so much of the time, we think being spiritual is checking out, being blissed out, or going into a corner and channeling an alien and creating a vortex. That is not, I'm sorry to say, that's not being spiritual.
There's absolutely nothing spiritual about that, actually.
It can be a fun cosmic experience. It can also be a dangerous cosmic experience. Spirituality is being in action to serve your highest and best in the highest and best of humanity.
In the cleanest way possible.
In the cleanest way possible. That is spirituality. Whatever religious belief you have, this is really about service and renunciation, dropping the lower, raising to the higher. And it's being in that consistent action.
Right. But I think a really important nuance to this is that, and you're highlighting it, but I want to even draw more of a spotlight on it. And it's that spirituality is never in the action. It's always in the attitude.
In the attitude.
It's in the attitude towards it, which is exactly what you're describing. It's the attitude behind that action. And there is that dynamic action to it. That's a natural outgrowth of the whole thing.
Right.
Right. So when you see somebody who is indolent, if you find yourself being super lazy around stuff or super lackadaisical or flaky, like we talked about in the last episode, that's not spiritual.
Yeah, it's delusion.
And that's when you're getting into the delusion and the pride.
Yeah.
I've got it. I'm good. It's all okay.
Right.
And all that does is make more congestion. It's playing to a lower part of yourself.
Right.
That is not the higher part of yourself.
Exactly.
To just put it as simply as you can. It's a lower part of yourself that's like, oh yeah, it's all fine. That really keeps you stuck.
Right. Swamiji used to teach intense work is rest.
Right.
Meaning the intense action, the work of service, you feel so fulfilled. There's so much energy because your mind, as the last episode, isn't full of the mental and emotional congestion.
Right.
And that is the complete absence of delusion and pride.
Right. And that's really why we're spending this time in this series to talk about this. Is the detox is cleaning house to get all of these impediments out of the way.
Right. So let's talk about that a little bit of how does one address if they're like, oh, and if you're listening to this and you're like, ooh, I might be having some delusion. Good for you for having the awareness and really the humility to look at yourself. That's amazing right then and there. And it starts with that. But for you, Nick, what would you suggest if someone's like, oh, maybe I am not in action enough, or maybe I am kind of in this magical delusional thinking, or I'm finding myself thinking I'm untouchable. Where does one start?
Well, the honest answer to this is don't try to do it yourself.
I think that's really smart. Because you're already in a sticky place. You're
in a really sticky place. And this is the place where mentorship and teachers come in really, really handy. And you have to have the best. You just have to have the best because it is that sneaky.
Right. A great place to start. I talked about this before, but Codes of Consciousness group, my group, kismaawake.com/groups. Connect with me there, hop in there and start a conversation.
Yeah. And to just be clear about, what is happening there that I think is so special. And you can go over and decide for yourself, but the space that Kisma in particular holds in that group to keep the teachings really clean and clear, to keep it about you and your highest and best track. That is one of the things that really helps to stay out of delusion.
Right.
And stay out of pride.
Absolutely.
And it's not that Kisma's the guru,
I'm not a guru.
There's no gurus here. But it is, she holds that space for those teachings to come through, because the teachings are the guru.
Right. I present some really sound teachings after years and years of study, continuous study too. Like this journey has not stopped for me.
Yeah.
So finding someone to, just back to like, don't do it yourself.
Yeah. It's just too sticky to try and self-coach through it. It creates a big old mess. It's the slowest way to go about it. And you can inadvertently, again, I don't want to put this fear, put a lot of fear out there, but you can inadvertently set yourself up for a really big fall.
Right.
And it's because you don't know what you don't know. You can't see what you can't see. And we've talked about this in previous episodes of how important mentors have been in our lives.
For sure.
And to constantly have that for yourself is really, really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so here's one of the things too, where we begin to look at, okay, is this happening? Is this not happening? Having that first piece of awareness. And then one of the most beautiful things is like the closer we are to whether you refer to the substance as God, universe, source, spirit, the closer that we desire to be with that substance, the easier it gets. Having said that, I want to insert that oftentimes as we're going through this spiritual awakening, things show up rapidly. It can come in sort of like really strong, like almost as if someone's knocking on our door again and again. It's like, whoa, why is this coming up? Why is this coming up? It's coming up to be resolved or let go of. Meaning if something challenging is arising, or you're like, why am I having this anger or this resentment? It's like your higher self is saying, hey, this is popping up for you to be aware and to solve and resolve. Yeah.
It brings up that, again, another really good reason to have the mentorship is that those things can take you down, right? You get sucked down that path.
Right.
And it's really easy to get into the pridefulness of like, oh, like what's wrong with these people, or why is this going this way?
Right.
It's everything else. And that's another sure sign of the pride.
Right.
And what I've seen, I've become very adept at spotting where those things come up, so in my clients, when those things show up, I've got a super sensitized radar to that because I know what a big challenge it can create.
Right.
And within a couple questions, it's when you know what you're looking for, it's really easy to reveal.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things. It's like, man, I can't tell you some of the disasters that we've averted, and those instant pivots for people of like, whoa, that's what was really going on. And here I am in a very different space now, back on my track, back in my growth, and back in my happy place, because that pride, as much as it can create that false sense of security, it's a false sense of security.
It is.
And a part of you knows that.
Yes. And your soul is screaming like, get on track. And the beautiful thing, everyone, is the moment that you pivot, you're like, okay, I want to face forward, get me back on track. There's so much divine help that comes your way.
Oh my God.
That humility piece and that willingness to see where you might have stepped off, gotten a little bit too elevated, high and mighty kind of thing, that willingness to get back in. There's so much help. That's like, oh, I'm so glad you saw this.
Yeah. So I think that about wraps up for that portion of it.
Well, we want to talk about the window shopping.
We definitely want to get to that, but I want to make sure that we got everything.
I feel that's clear. The pride, the delusion, they kind of integrate. The pride is going to show up more of like, I'm better. It's a superiority complex in many ways, and one that is very destructive. The delusion can show up more of a complacency and like, I'm all good, man. I think I'm just going to go smoke a joint, sit on the beach, and just channel an alien. Please don't do that. Like, I mean, whatever you do is your business. But I'm just saying it's not as clean as really facing your own inner self and going out and being of service.
Yeah. If you're doing that, come to us. Let us help you do it the right way so that you don't make a big mess in your life.
Yeah.
And now, I think it's good to pivot to the window shopping.
The window shopping's a good one.
So detoxing, right? Detoxifying, decluttering. All right. This is one of the biggest ones for that in and of itself, because when you think about the power of one really simple teaching, you don't need a lot.
Right.
But in our consumer society,
we're so trained. More and more and more.
More and more and more. More is better. I need to learn more. I want to know more.
I want more. I want to have more. I want to make more. Everything is more.
And I respect that. I respect the idea that, boy, I want to know it all. Like I want all the secrets. I want all the mysteries. I actually really respect that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's cool. And it needs to be tempered.
Right.
Because let's take one really simple teaching. As you think, so you become.
Absolutely.
We've heard this 8 million times. We've read it on 8 billion memes.
Right.
and if we really understood that teaching, we would not think some of the things that we think.
Exactly.
We wouldn't go down some of the trails that we go down.
We would not allow it to happen.
That is a teaching that has not been fully embodied.
Yeah.
All right. So if you were to just take that one teaching and really take it through to its end, truly embody it, it will change every area of your life. And you don't need anything more.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Absolutely.
So when we get off on all these different trails, and this is one, I remember myself when I started to, really get on the journey and get super fascinated with things and how it all works and all that sort of stuff. Well, I wanted to there was a part of me that was like, well, if I know it all, I can kind of sort through it and I can find the truth and piece it all together from there, because it's all in these different places. It's just saying it in different ways and somehow it will synthesize for myself.
No.
And the opposite happened.
Right. You got very congested, right?
It's more congested. It gets
and
more
confusing.
Confused in the head of okay, well, they say this in this one, and then they put it this way in that one. It kind of means the same thing, but it's a different context, and I don't quite understand. And okay, well, I guess I'll just make it up myself.
Right.
Spiritual pride.
It's spiritual pride.
Okay. That's spiritual pride. And it happened because of all the window shopping.
Right.
It's called being educated beyond your awareness.
And it's not wisdom. It's just information.
It's just information.
Yeah. I do want to just add one though.
Oh yeah.
So as you think, but as you think, you become. So you're right. Start with that. Mm-hmm. What's happening in the head is creating your reality. What's happening in your head is creating your reality. The other piece is, if you ask for help, it's going to come.
Yeah.
I mean, those two things right there, if we just stripped everything back to that, life would be magical.
Yeah. I would even tweak that second one a little bit. If you ask for help, it's already here.
That's good. It's already here.
Just a little bit, because and that's the highest truth.
It really is. It is already here. Yeah. We're just becoming receptive to it. Right. And we're stepping into, the law of receptivity and the law of non-resistance and the law of supply. It's already here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful one.
Mm-hmm.
That's really...
So think about that, everyone. If you just okay, I got 2 teachings I'm going to ponder every single day. As I think, I become, and I'm going to ask for help because it's already here.
That's it.
And of course, layer it with gratitude.
Right. So that congestion, it comes from that consumer mind that just wants more. And you have to really ask yourself, how is this serving me?
Right.
Do you need to know everything?
Right.
Or do you really just need to master yourself? Mastering yourself has very little to do with having a ton of information. It has everything to do with your commitment to that path.
Right.
And commitment to staying true to your highest.
Absolutely.
And allowing that to expand.
Right.
It doesn't have to do with knowing a whole lot at all.
Right.
Right. It has to do, let's see how this shows up, right? Because, all right, let's look at those really spiritual folks who know the Bible, for example, inside and out. Not to pick on Christians, but we'll pick on Christians for a second. You could go down this route with any religion. Okay, so they know the Bible inside and out. They can quote verse after verse after verse, and they know it. They know the teachings.
Right.
And they get busted for being in affairs and defiling their relationship. They get busted for kiddie porn or for whatever it is that they're doing. Sorry. Did too much?
Too much.
A little too much. Okay. Well, they get busted for whatever they're doing that's not following the teachings. All right. So they know it. They know the information, and yet they made a huge mess of their lives and of their karma because they didn't really know it. They didn't honor it. They didn't know it deeply enough to not do those things.
Right. And I just disclaimer, this isn't, we're not talking about all Christians. We're not talking let's just take any label of any religion out of it, please, before,
You could say the same thing about the jihadists.
Any religion, it's like if we think we know it so well and then we stray and we start creating funkiness, we didn't know it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a distortion. And it's the same thing. That's the pride, that the spiritual pride is really takes the teachings and distorts them to suit what your own desires are.
Right.
Which is the
not
opposite.
The way it works.
That's the opposite of everything. Right. It's not about bending those laws to your will. That's impossible.
Right.
What it is about really aligning yourself with those laws so that you can be in that cosmic dance.
Exactly. Right. The cosmic dance.
So spiritual window shopping, I see it in so many different ways. People learn a million different modalities. They learn a million different things and all these different things. And it's like, cool. They have a place. They have a value. And this is about not making any of them wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You said that earlier, and I thought that was really, really cool. It's to understand that there are certain tools at every step of the journey that will get you to the next place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
And to honor that and to cut off or to release, I think is a better way to put that, full stop, to release the things that just aren't going to get you where you want to go.
Right.
It's the same with anything. The things that got you to where you're at aren't going to get you where you ultimately want to go.
Right.
So that evolution becomes really necessary. But if you're holding on to all of the old stuff, then you're just gonna gather more and more baggage, and it's gonna be like carrying a ball and chain along with you on the journey that is supposed to be leading to more lightness and freedom.
Exactly. Heavy.
Yeah.
Don't want to be heavy.
It's a big deal. So find your thing.
Yeah. Find the thing, investigate, peel it back, be willing to go deep and not wide. Of course, we love suggesting some of Swami Parthasarathy's books, Fall of the Human Intellect. Great book to start because it really does describe the fall of the human, just losing the intellect, not being able to discern and assess. I will put the link in the show notes there. Another one, Governing Business and Relationships.
Awesome book.
Amazing book. If you want something a little bit different, I love The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity by Catherine Ponder. Great teacher of mine, and it's a little bit more woo in a way. It's such beautifully written from a Christian perspective and a really sort of new age thought.
Yeah, it's a little bit more woo, but at the same time, it's also a more practical.
Just great steps. Yeah.
It's very practically written.
Mm-hmm. And if you're looking for more prosperity, that's a great book. Just dialing in, of course, come over to Codes of Consciousness and soak up a lot of the Vedanta-based teachings and some of the influence from Catherine. And I think as well, it just always helps for us to pause. We always come back to this forgiveness and gratitude.
Yeah.
When we're willing to forgive, we're willing to embody more gratitude. I always say gratitude amplifies. Gratitude amplifies the good stuff. So say you begin to just dial it way back and ponder your life purpose. When you begin to have gratitude for everything that's been given to you, everything that you've done, that stuff grows. It blossoms right in front of you, and you're able to see the next step, the next piece, etc. And it doesn't have to be some full-on knowing everything. I mean, you can study as much as you want, but it's dialing it back to really the basics of spirituality, which is going to be gratitude, forgiveness, and service.
Yep.
And action, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I think about the places where I've chosen to put my stake in the ground, Vedanta, hands down.
For sure.
The teachings of Swami Parthasarathy are so clean and so clear and so rich.
Right.
They touch every part of your life in a truly profound way.
Yeah.
And everything that we're sharing on the podcast is influenced by that in some way.
Yeah.
And then as far as like managing my human in a different way, energy mastery has been the thing for me. It's like when I had learned a whole bunch of different modalities and all these different things. And when I learned that, I was like, yep, this covers it all.
Right.
We're good.
Yeah.
And that was the place where I could just dive in super, super deep to really get the richness of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough. Like that's way, way more than enough.
The beautiful thing about energy mastery, and if you're interested in attending one of Nick's trainings, info@sourcemovement.com, please email him, put energy mastery in the subject. But it cleans out all the gunkiness so that you can be more spiritually tapped in.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, if you want to be a healer, you want to know energy work, or you just want to manage your own energy, it's not just about energy. It's about heightening your spiritual place.
It is. It really is. And we'll talk about it more in the episode when we talk about the challenges with the spiritual awakening, because energy mastery is an amazing tool to do exactly that. Lots of people think like, oh, spiritual energy is just inherently clean and clear. Spoiler alert, it's not.
Yeah, we got to look at that.
It's just not. And it's also not difficult to clean up.
Right.
So
just have to have the tools.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that episode. I think that'll be super fun. But for now, those are the things, like choose your place to put your stake in the ground. We're so happy that you're here. We hope you hang out with us for a long, long time.
Right.
And we really hope also that you find your place to really just dive in and just be where you're at and really get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah, love it. So thanks for joining us. Any questions, info@sourcemovement.com. Feel free to share this episode with people that you love. Check us out on iTunes. Leave some feedback review. That always helps to get the message out there. And most importantly, let us know if we can help you in any way, shape, or form.
Peace.
Namaste. Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.